Hello everybody! In this video, we are going to begin the process of ballasting our 3 loops of track. So in the previous videos, if you've been following along, we've laid down 3 loops of Atlas Flex track on our layout here. We've got 2 loops of HO scale there in the front, and then we've got a loop of N scale or narrow gauge track there. And so it's all soldered together and tacked down and powered up. And now it's time to put some ballast on those tracks. So let's begin. All right, so at Christmas time, we received these 2 ballasters here, and I think the pronunciation of this company is Prozis. And we have 1 ballaster that is for the HO scale track and 1 ballaster for the N scale track. So let's go ahead and take those out of their packages. Yeah, start with the N scale one there. Just simple packaging, just basically a plastic envelope stapled shut, but it's always fun to unbox. So you get the plastic ballaster. It's just basically a hopper that glides along the track. It's got a couple of slots at the bottom there. And we'll do a practice set of tracks before we try to ballast for real on the layout. And then it's got a instruction manual there to show you how to use it. Little picture there. It's not a very extensive one here. I think these are just kind of use your common sense here in order to figure out how to use them. So hopefully we have enough common sense to use them correctly on the track. All right, let's open up the other one. I think the white background of our table here is probably not the best to show something made of clear plastic, but you'll get a better view of it when we ballast on the track. This one here is HO, obviously a little bit bigger. And this one here, I believe it has an automatic, or it has a shut-off, so that when you're rolling it along, you can actually stop the flow of ballast. The N-scale one, I don't think they had an N-scale one like that. So the N-scale one, you just pour in, and there's nothing to stop the ballast from coming out, so you just keep moving along. This one here, it looks like you can stop and stop the ballast from coming out of the hopper. So yeah, let's give it a practice before we take it out and ballast the actual railroad. All right, so we'll give you a quick look at the instructions that came with the ballasters here. The one on the left is the N-scale instructions there, and then the one on the right is the HO scale instructions. Again, just to give you a quick look at that, but these are pretty easy to figure out. You shouldn't have any problems with that. All right, I'm just going to very briefly show you how this works here. As you can see on this HO ballaster that has the mechanism here, it's got this little lever that you can pull back and forth. And if you look down inside the hopper to the left on this side here, you'll see some little slots at the bottom of the hopper. And if I pull this back, you'll see those slots cover up. And so this is how that works. It's just a little lever here that if you pull it back, it'll cut off the ballast to the hopper, and you can lift it up without making a mess and all that stuff. Like I said, the N-scale one doesn't have that, but I'm sure that we'll be able to deal with that. So anyway, just a quick little look at that just to see how it operates. All right, so we've never done this ballasting before. Again, everything we're doing is, with this layout here, we're doing for the first time. So we've watched a few videos on it, but I think this is all we'll need in order to ballast our track. So we obviously need the track to ballast on the layout. We got a couple sample pieces here. We're gonna do a little practice run. You have your ballasters, obviously your N-scale ballaster, HO scale ballaster, the ballast itself, and this is Woodland Scenic's medium ballast gray blend, so that feels like it's should look pretty decent on the track. You've got, for later on, after the ballast is down, we'll be gluing that ballast down. So we have this Woodland Scenic's Scenic Glue, and we have a little spray bottle. I'm not sure how it's going to spray out. Hopefully the mixture isn't too thick to come out through the spray bottle, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And then additionally, we found that a funnel should be helpful and transferring the ballast from the bottle into the hoppers, and then a little brush here to do some, cleanup and touch-up work after you've laid your ballast down. If you spilled over or whatever. What I'm anticipating is when we go over these soldered joints, the ballast is not going to run along the track as smooth as it will on the regular track here, the rest of the track. So we'll probably have to kind of negotiate it over the soldered joints, and that might create a little bit of a bumpy mess that we'll have to clean up with the brush. So that's what we'll use that for. So with that, I think we'll just do a little practice run here, and then we'll start ballasting the layout. All right, one other thing before we get started, and this is probably obvious, but the ballaster itself has a couple of little slots that run along the bottom, and those are the things that kind of glide up the track here. All right, so the first thing he's going to do as he gets started is he's going to fill the ballaster with some ballast, and this is where I think the funnel will come in handy. And he's got the ballaster shut, of course. Again, the N scale one will be a little trickier because it doesn't have a shut off, but so you just fill that hopper right up. Then he'll go ahead and slide that open, and basically this track we have to hold in place because it's loose. But yeah, you can see there it's distributing the ballast, dropping it right out of the hopper. A little test track there. It distributes the ballast pretty nicely. And if you have any problems with distribution, you can just make another pass over it because the ballaster just kind of covers everything. And then you'll see here that there's a lot of ballast that's been left on the ties, and that's where the brush comes in. You can just kind of brush that. Get the camera in handheld mode here because I don't think the tripod would really kind of get a shot with all the movement here with this. So yeah, just clean off the ties. All right, well, let's give the N scale track a shot and see how that goes. Just get a good little sample there. Actually, while the ballaster is just sitting there being filled with ballast, a lot doesn't really spill out, even though this one doesn't close. Now, we recovered this ballast after we practiced on the track. On the HO track, we just scooped it up and put it back in the bottle. We made sure our surface here was nice and clean so that we weren't scooping other junk into the ballast bottle. But anyway, all right, let's give it a run up the track and see how it works. Yeah, so the ballast is, everything here is a lot smaller with the N scale. So it took a couple of passes to make sure that we got good coverage. But, it works fine. So, yeah, we got a little spillage there at the end because the track isn't fastened down and it's moving around and it's kind of hard to handle. So we just want to get an idea of how well it slides along the track and what the distribution is. And that looks pretty good. And what we noticed about the N scale is that it doesn't leave a lot of ballast on the ties. So there's not going to be a lot to brush off in the end, I don't think. So yeah, so I think that these are going to work out good. We'll just need to get out there on the layout and start laying some ballast and see how it goes. All right, everybody. So over here on the track, we have our ballaster sitting with the grooves in on top of the track here. So it slides right along. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some ballast here. I'm just going to take the top right off. I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. And we'll just pour it in. If you get any overspillage, it's totally fine. We're going to run over this with like a little cordless vac and take up all the extra ballast. So just pop it in there. We'll open up the hopper and basically we'll just, let me get my hand on the other side here so you can see. And we'll basically just roll right along until the hopper is empty. Now we're going to cross a joint there, and the hopper may not smoothly go over that, so we'll just lift it up a little bit, and then we'll continue around until the hopper is empty. Oops, got a little overspill there, but like I said, we can vacuum that up. So this is basically what you are left with after you put a hopper of ballast down. Okay, so that actually looks pretty good. It laid down a nice uniform, section of ballast here. The next thing you want to do though is you want to take your brush and you want to get all of that ballast off of the ties, and particularly you want to make sure the ballast is off of the inside of those rails, because you don't want, again, anything that's going to cause derailments or anything like that. Now it might be best to do the ballast in small sections rather than ballasting everything and then going back and gluing it, because you see here I'm scooping up quite a bit of extra as I move forward here. So when you do that, that ballast has to go somewhere. So basically just scoop it right, past the, the section that you did. We could have also gone this way a little bit. So just clear those rails right off. And again, just make sure the ballast is out of the inside of those tracks. And if you get anything, like if you mess anything up on the outside or whatever, just take your brush and just kind of re-neaten it up. This is super easy to do. I think if you're using the ballast spreader, the worst that can happen is that, actually there really isn't much that can really happen. But yeah, it's just a great tool. So we'll just finish our little brushing exercise here. What we usually do is just run a car over it. Just make sure everything's nice and smooth here. It seems to be, there's a little roughness over here, I think. Yeah, right about here. So I'm just gonna take my brush, just make sure all that ballast is off the rails. Again, little car test. And that's pretty smooth. All right, so that's the brushing. Now you can go as far as you want to here as far as cleaning off these rails. I've seen videos. Again, we're not covering any new territory here. There's a lot of videos out there on ballasting. But yeah, some of the guys really, well, some of the people really get that ballast right off of the rails so that the ties, sorry, so that those ties are exposed. It's a bit of a tedious process, but, and again, kind of following Bob Ross's philosophy, it's your railroad, you can do what you want. So if you think that in real life, ties might be covered in a little bit of ballast, then you're happy with that look, then go for it. So one of the most important aspects of your ballasting job is the glue that you use. So from the research that we have done, the type of glue that you want to use on your ballasting job is a PVC white glue. Now we have 3 examples right here. We have the Mod Podge in matte finish. We have the Woodland Scenic glue, and also just plain old Elmer's glue all. These are all examples of white glue. And the advantage of white glue is that it's kind of an all-purpose glue, but it also dries clear. So when you lay it down, you shouldn't really see a lot of glue residue once it's dry. Now, we're not going to be using straight white glue here. What we're going to be doing is mixing it with water. And I think the predominant ratio of glue to water is a 1-to-1 mix. So it would be 1 part water, 1 part glue. So just an even mix there. So what we're going to do is, even though we have 3 choices here, we're just going to go with Mod Podge because the container is already open and we use Mod Podge on a lot of different projects. And we've had good luck with it. So we are not going to use Elmer's, not going to use the Woodland Scenics. We're going to go ahead with the Mod Podge. And we're going to mix up a batch right here. And then we're going to go through some of the different delivery methods that you can use to lay it on the track. So to get our mixture in the ballpark, we have these graduated cups that we bought from Amazon. Now we use these primarily for mixing epoxy resin, which the mixture of epoxy resin has to be almost exact in order for it to harden correctly. But even though we're talking about a 1-to-1 ratio here, that's really, if you go over or under, it's not a big deal. It's really just to make the glue dilute enough where you can either spray it or dispense it out of a syringe or an eyedropper, and it will soak into the ballast. So the measurements here aren't super critical. So basically just a 1-to-1. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna mix a 6-ounce batch of glue here. So we're gonna pour 3 ounces of water. And again, doesn't have to be exact. Just an approximation is good. And then we're going to do 3 ounces of Mod Podge here. So what we're going to do is bring it up to the 6-ounce mark. And you can just do this with a measuring cup at home. We just happen to have these cups here. They work out pretty good for measuring. They're pretty accurate. So here's just pouring the Mod Podge in. And you can see in the glass there that it's pretty separated there. So he's gonna have to stir that in, which he'll do next. One other thing that you definitely want to do here is you want to throw in 2 or 3 drops of just some regular plain old dish detergent. This is just Palmolive Ultra, I think, that we just have under the kitchen sink. So he's going to take a couple of drops of that and he's going to drop it into the mixture here. Now the reason you do that is the dish detergent liquid will act as what's known as a surfactant. And what a surfactant does is it reduces surface tension of water, so that when we go put this glue mixture on the ballast, it doesn't want to ball up and just sit on the top because of surface tension. That's the theory behind it anyway. So you don't want to, hopefully you won't miss out on that step. Yeah, it's a kind of an important step. So he's going to mix that whole shebang together. And it mixes together pretty good. It's not like you're trying to mix a clump of something into water and breaking up. It actually stirs in really nice with hardly any effort at all. You won't feel, it's not like, mixing dough and flour and water where you're trying to get the lumps out and things like that. It separates or it combines pretty good and pretty readily. All right, let's talk about glue dispersal systems here. So we have a few different options here that you can use. So on the far right there is the Woodland Scenics sprayer. And then next in line there is a syringe that we bought from CVS. It's just a medication delivery syringe. It doesn't have a needle or anything like that. You don't want to buy a syringe with a needle for this project. And then next to that we have a simple eyedropper. And then next to that we have a little spritz bottle that we bought a few of those from Amazon for some of the project that we were doing. But they're all ways that you can use to spread the glue. Now, there's pros and cons to each one of them, and the spray bottles to me and the spritz bottle, we played around with those a little bit, and they're a little heavy-handed the way they spray. You can't really control how much comes out of these. So when you try to control how forceful you want the glue to come out, sometimes it just kind of dribbles out and then it comes out in big liquid blobs, and then it kind of spreads your ballast around. The misting part of it is sometimes too wide, and then you get glue like on the periphery of your track and so forth. So we didn't really like either the spray bottle or the spritz bottle. So what we opted to do was to spread our glue with a syringe. You can kind of push it out at a very constant rate. As long as you have steady hands, you can push that glue out at whatever rate you want to. And I feel like we had more control with the syringe. All right, so after we've laid our ballast and after we've brushed to our satisfaction here, the ballast off of the ties, the next step is to lay down some glue. And so we have a cup here with a little bit of a glue mixture here. And just to recap on our glue mixture section of the video here, This is a 1-to-1 ratio with white glue, and white glue can be Elmer's glue, it can be that Woodland Scenics glue, and it can also be Mod Podge. If you do Mod Podge, by the way, do the matte finish, not the glossy finish. Mod Podge comes in different finishes, so do the matte. So plunger all the way in, stick your plunger into stick your syringe into the mixture, and just draw back. And there we have a little syringe full of glue. Now laying it down is kind of a little bit of art versus science here. So what I'm going to do here is I think I can control it if I put the syringe, if I hold the syringe like this and just kind of push, whoops, and just push with the palm of my hand. I think I can control what comes out, because you don't want it to squirt out. You just want it to kind of drip out where you're aiming it. So we'll go ahead and give that a shot. This is the first time I'm doing this, by the way. So hopefully it works out, but if I can get that shot, hopefully there. I'm just kind of pushing with my thumb, or with my palm of my hand, and you can see here. We're trying not to get any extra outside of the ballast. And it's coming out here in like little blobs. I'm not sure I was expecting that, but see, that's the surface, that's the water tension at work there, I think. So here, like you can see, that's soaked in pretty good. We have a little overshot here that I'm hoping that, you know, we'll be able to take care of in some way, shape, or form. And then we'll just make sure this, but it does absorb into the ballast a little bit. I'm not sure I'm 100% happy with this. Hopefully that'll dry and be less noticeable. But so we'll just, hopefully my hand's on there, we'll just continue it. To get the drip, I think what we'll try to do here is just try to get it kind of more toward the rail side, and then maybe it'll kind of drip into the edges there. So again, kind of first time here. We'll see how this works out in the end. Yeah, it just kind of rolls off there. That was supposed to be the job of the dish detergent, is to kind of deal with that surface tension there that you saw. We'll drop a little bit more. We may have to put a little bit more dish detergent in that, maybe. I'm not too worried about these little blotches here. Like I said, hopefully they'll dry clear, and maybe you won't see them. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, I'm not sure. But what we'll do with that is we can take a little bit of that scenic, woodland scenic, like grassy, you know, not the matte, but the actual loose stuff. And we can just spread some over there, whether it's brown or some other color, and just make it look like natural foliage to cover those up. So I'm not too worried about that. I know it doesn't look the neatest, but we'll continue around here. And I'm sorry if my hand is in the way. I'm right-handed, so it's like, and I'm working left to right. Again, I think I might have done that centerpiece already. Once it soaks in, then it's really kind of hard to see what you did. And I'm just going to take the brush and just kind of brush that through. Maybe spread that glue out a little bit more. And then, just as kind of a last thing here, with the glue still kind of wet, we'll just run the car over it and just make sure that it's still going to roll over that ballast nice. And it seems to be doing that. If you do get a little ballast that is interfering with the operations of the wheels, I'm just going to pull that car back. You can, I think what you can do is actually just kind of hold the car down and run it through, and maybe it'll plow the ballast that might be in the way out of the way. I don't know if that theory holds, but Yeah, so we'll check in on this in a couple of minutes after this dries so that you can get a sense of like what maybe the staining might look like. But like I said, I think we can deal with that. If it doesn't dry nice and it looks crappy, we'll go ahead and we'll just kind of sprinkle some woodland scenics, surfacing stuff to it, surface foliage or whatever to it, and cover that up. I think that'll probably work okay. But yeah, so there's a section. So we're just going to continue around and just continue ballasting the track, and we'll check in with you later. Okay, once all the gluing is done with the ballast, the next thing you want to do is kind of clean up your track. So we have this little abrasive pad that we've gotten with some other products. It's not specifically for railroading, but it seems to be about the right grit. And so we're just going to go ahead and go over the top of the rails with that. And yeah, just clean any of the glue that got on the track will kind of interfere with the connectivity, I think, between the rail and the wheels of the locomotives. So you just want to make sure that you return your rails back to a good state of connectivity. Another tool that might be helpful in your cleanup is one of these kind of dental pick type of tools here that you can pick up at like a Harbor Freight, pretty cheap. Yeah, so what ends up happening here is that when you're ballasting and gluing, some of those little chunks of ballast may end up on the inside of that rail and may cause some rough running and maybe some derailments. So if you're taking your locomotive on a test run and you feel like it's running rough, or even if you get some derailments, it might not hurt to kind of go around the inside edges of your track and just make sure there's no ballast glued in a position that might cause those wheel flanges on the inside of the track to jump. With our first loop completed and our cleanup done, we're taking our locomotive out for a little test run to make sure that everything runs okay. And so far, so good. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to tackle this end scale loop. Now we still have this inner or middle HO loop to do, but we'll do that last since we've already done an HO. What we'll do now is we'll start in on this end scale loop. And as you can see here, we have our ballaster on the track and ready to go. As you saw from the unboxing section, that ballaster has two slots underneath it that kind of ride along the rails. So that you just fill it with ballast and you just run it along just like you saw us do with the HO and you saw in the example on the bench. So what we're going to do here is fill that with ballast and yeah, just start ballasting, just get into it. Now, one thing we're going to do here that we did different from the HO scale is we're going to use an eyedropper for the glue rather than the syringe. Another method we saw on YouTube is that if you tap the track, you can shake the ballast, kind of vibrate, I guess, the ballast right off of those tires. 2 loops done, it's time to hit that middle loop. So let's get busy and let's ballast that last loop and put this project behind us. All right, so we've got that 3rd loop all ballasted. As you can see, as we kind of pan around here, we have all 3 of our loops now ballasted. And so with that done, we have a couple more things we need to do, which we would kind of classify as cleanup. So the first thing we want to do with that middle loop, and we did this with the other 2 loops, is that we want to go around and inspect the inside of the rail and just make sure that no ballast kind of clumped up on the inside of the rail that might cause derailments and rough running and things like that. So we'll take our rolling stock and just kind of by using our hand, just kind of roll it around and feel for rough spots or anything that really wants to make that rolling stock derail. And because those tie plates on the rails are delicate, we don't want to just run the dental tool pick just all around there. What we'll do is we'll just look for spots that look like they could be problems and then just pick the stone out of there as we see them. We don't want to, create more problems than is necessary by just indiscriminately running that dental tool around the inside of the rail. Because that's, where all the action happens as far as the wheels go and the flanges and all that stuff. The next thing we're going to do is take our abrasive pad, and that's not a strong abrasive, that's a very fine abrasive, and we're just going to go over the rails and just make sure all the glue is off the rails. Anything that will interfere with connectivity between the locomotive and the track, we want to make sure that's we get all that off. And then lastly, we are going to vacuum. So what we'll do is we'll take, like here, you can see as I zoom in, we've got some ballasting that got spread out, whether extra kind of spilled out of the ballasters that we were using or whatever, or things that we were doing by hand. You're going to get a little extra ballast on there that you weren't counting on, that you have to clean up. So we'll go around with our little Porta cable 20-volt shop vac, and we'll take that off. Now, one thing that we did before we got to this stage that I don't think we have on camera is that after we ballasted and after the ballast glue dried, we did go around and inspect and make sure that we actually hit everything with glue. When you're using that glue, a lot of times you're doing small sections at a time, and you might miss a couple inches between sections just because you can't really see where you left off. And so just go around and just feel, and if you feel any loose ballast, just go ahead and throw a few drops of glue on that, or a couple drops of glue, and take care of those. So we already did that little step. So all the ballast that you see here is pretty much fastened down. So so we're just going to go ahead and do the cleanup, and then we are going to test some locomotives and rolling stock on each loop just to make sure that everything's running smoothly, and we'll go from there. All right, so one unexpected thing that happened when we were gluing our ballast down is that the glue actually ran out from under the ballast and got onto our grass mat here and kind of stained it. You can see it right here. And that has just happened pretty much all over the track. You can see over there we have some. So I didn't see that on anybody else's video. We used kind of the same gluing recipes and so forth. So we might have gone a little heavy-handed on the glue. And at first I was a little bit worried about it, but I think it's actually not necessarily a bad thing here. How we're going to handle that is we are going to use some of our Woodland Scenics. In this case here, we're going to be using some blended turf, and we're going to be using some coarse turf. And what we'll do is we'll go around the rail, and every place that we see some of this dried white glue run out right here, we'll put a layer of blended turf, which is pretty close to the grass mat color. I haven't been able to find the grass mat shade of like just loose turf, but I just got what was close enough, and I went with something that looked a little drier, so that you might expect that to be next to, drier grass next to the ballast, ballasting on the railroad. So we went with that, and then some loose turf, and as you can see here, we did a little test spot over here. It actually covers up that dried glue runoff pretty well. So we're just going to go, as part of our foliage update, we're going to go around the track, and every place that we see this kind of glue run out, see it's pretty bad right there, we're going to use this technique and put some turf foliage or however you want to put it, like right next to the ballasting or the rails, and I think that'll cover it up quite nice. So yeah, it was kind of an unfortunate thing. We weren't expecting that. I didn't see it in any other videos. I don't know if anybody else has experienced it, but if you do, I think this is going to be the cure to cover that up. And I think that we would probably do something next to the ballasting anyway, to kind of make the transition from the grass mat to kind of the rough turf that would be next to, a rail line's ballasting, and I think it'll actually work to our advantage. So we won't be doing that in this ballasting video, but if in the video you've seen these dark spots here that looks like kind of water staining almost, that's the glue runoff. And yeah, just to know that we have a plan for that, and we'll go into that in a little bit more detail when we do our foliage update, where we set trees and do some grass stuff, some additional kind of grass stuff and all that. So anyway, just wanted to mention that in case you saw that on the video. So yeah, so with the ballasting complete, I think that's going to do it for this update. Now the next update, we are going to start to get into some of the scenery. Now that we have basically everything that's going to be fastened to the surface is fastened, it's time to do some scenery. So that'll be next. And yeah, that'll be a lot of fun, because that's really where kind of the creativity comes in now that we've got everything fastened down. Now these buildings here that we have in the middle of the layout, those aren't in their permanent spot. We just put them on the table just to get a sense of, how big things are and where they can go in the layout and all that. So we'll be rearranging that. We'll be laying down some trees, and again, we'll be taking care of the areas on either side of that ballast there, like we just mentioned. So we look forward to that, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.